this is it. My final video talking movies way too much in 2024. This year I saw over 140 new releases, and I've saved the best for last. These are the movies that made me love movies the most this year. Here are my picks for the 10 best movies of 2024. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what were your favorite movies of 2024? The movies that made you say,
I love movies. Gosh, I love movies.
As we go into this, these aren't meant to be the objective 10 best movies of the year. Movies are art, and so these are the movies that moved me emotionally the most, the films that stayed in my brain the longest, the movies that put the biggest grin on my face, or that just got me excited about movies. One more thing before we get started, there is a companion video to this over on Patreon with 13 hidden gems in 2024. These are smaller movies that I really enjoyed that I feel like not enough people were talking about. If you use code Sean25, you can get 25% off and a new annual membership to Patreon. You can learn more about Patreon and all the exclusives and everything that comes with it down below at the link in the description. And let's get started. Kicking things off, Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, as I was compiling this list, I struggled to find the right movie to put in this 10th slot. And I looked at some prestige films, some dramas, indie films, genre films. Deadpool Wolverine was not my first choice. It was like my fourth or fifth choice. And every time I put a different movie into this slot, I went, I don't think I'm being honest with myself, until I put Deadpool and Wolverine in the spot and I went, I know it's mainstream, I know it's an obvious choice, but at the end of the day, this was possibly the most entertaining film that I saw in the theater this year. Ryan Reynolds is incredibly funny. The bromance with him and Hugh Jackman, both on screen, off screen, is incredibly entertaining. They're both so charismatic. They have so much chemistry. So a movie built around that is, of course, very, very watchable. But then you add on top of that, it's a movie designed to be this celebration of the Fox X-Men universe, filled with a bunch of cameos I wanted to see and a bunch of cameos I did not realize how much they would mean to me seeing them on the big screen. Put such a big grin on my face. My wife didn't want to go see this movie, but like I forced her to go see it because I just wanted to watch her see Gambit, Blade, Jennifer Garner show up on the big screen and see her reaction. That's how excited I was about this film. And when movies elicit that kind of reaction where I just have to share it, I have to convince my wife, I want to experience it with her, that's a movie that clearly was something special that tapped into something interesting and different. Now, of course, Disney will learn the wrong lessons from this movie. I'm very nervous that the one trick that seems to really work for the MCU right now is nostalgia, but the trick really works in some of these movies, and this one had the feels. Hugh Jackman brought the gravitas, even a little bit of an emotional punch with his character's arc, and it crescendos in just a nice way in the finale that puts a gigantic grin on your face. So, Deadpool and Wolverine cracks the top 10. Number 9, Longlegs. This is a film that wasn't really on my radar. I was able to see the movie before the buzz really took over that created gigantic expectations for a bunch of other people. I suppose I was a part of creating those expectations for other people. But as for me, I went into this movie knowing very little about it and absolutely love what this film had to deliver. And it made me realize how much I missed all the old serial killer films that we used to get. And this was like a throwback serial killer film in the vein of Silence of the Lambs, Seven, Zodiac, except very much with its own spin on it. Whether you're talking about how the movie was shot with all of these kind of wide angle Stanley Kubrick lenses that just gave it this created this sense of unease throughout the entire movie where you could just see so much behind the characters and things would happen and you'd fill in the gaps with the sound design, or that it just added just a little bit of supernatural elements into it, giving it its own flavor. So for me, this is one that just absolutely surprised me, that I was not anticipating. It wasn't really on my radar. Like, oh, like Nicolas Cage is a serial killer. Went to go see it, and I was like, wow, that was really, really cool. I want to go tell people about that movie. Speaking of movies I wanted to tell people about, Rebel Ridge. This is another one that wasn't really on my radar. I wasn't really familiar with the lead actor besides him being a very small part in the movie Old. I didn't watch the trailer when it dropped, though there was a little bit of buzz. And I really just checked out the movie because I like the genre, and I think I'd heard it was pretty good. Watched it on a Friday morning and went, whoa! That was really good. I want to watch that with my wife. So I went and got her and watched it a second time in the exact same day. And to the best of my knowledge, that's the only movie where I did that this year, that I was so excited about a film. I both wanted to see it again, I was willing to see it again, and I just wanted to share it immediately with the one person I could share it with, my wife, and then wanted to talk about it on the internet. You know, at its core, it's a throwback action thriller in the vein of First Blood as well as Reacher. So it's a familiar genre, but it found a way to kind of have its own flavor with the dynamics between our lead character and the corrupt cops in the film. And even just the way our character is trained, that he's not Rambo. He cares deeply about de-escalating, and that changes the way the action scenes are handled in a way that just makes them interesting and refreshing by not escalating all of the violence in them. It has very much a slow burn nature to it with a big explosive finale to it. And our lead actor here, this is one of those scenarios where I just watched a movie and went, well, the star of this movie is obviously a movie star. This guy is going places, and within a month, he was cast as Green Lantern, and then, of course, he's Mufasa, so he's absolutely going places. He has such a screen presence. He doesn't need a bunch of lines. He doesn't need a bunch of quips. He himself just has a magnetism to him, and that's what you need in a movie like this. Very much as this movie leans into a genre, it found a way to cut through the noise in a very familiar space. Next up, The Substance. This is a film where, when it first came out, if you asked me to score it, I probably would have given it like a B+, said there's a lot of things I really enjoyed about it. Maybe it went a little bit too crazy in the third act, but a really well-made, interesting film. But this is the example of a movie that just stays in your head, and you keep thinking about it, and it means more to you with time. It's a film that has so much like shocking imagery, gross out moments, that there's so many ways that the body horror elements of the film can dominate your experience while you're watching it. But it's also a film that has a lot to say about so many different things, in which case, as you move away from the experience of being in the theater, watching the gross out images, you just start processing all the layers of everything that took place in the film. Of course, it's commenting on unrealistic beauty standards. Of course, it's diving into the nature of Hollywood and treating people like commodities. But just even as a character study, there's just some amazing moments in here where the Demi Moore version of the characters prepping for a date, fantastic scene with everything it communicates about her. And in this fantastical film, it's also so relatable, whether you have those body image issues that she has, or it's something else that cripples you. There's just so many different layers to everything taking place in it. Even the basic concept of the two bodies and what that all means, you can just sit there pondering it. It's just such a clever concept that's also packaged in a way filled with shocking images that will stay with you for a very long time. And those are just the conceptual script ideas that were great about the film, but you can dive into the framing of the shots, the color scheme, the use of these wide-angle lenses, the sound design that just creates this ick factor just when characters are eating food. There's so many different levels to where this movie just succeeds and captures your attention and just stays in your brain. So this is the movie to me that with time just got better and better in my mind. Number 6, Hitman. My close personal friend, whom I've only spoken to for 30 seconds, Glenn Powell, had quite the year. He started 2024 writing the word-of-mouth hit that was Anyone But You, and then he had Hitman as well as Twisters. Today, we're primarily talking about Hitman. This is a film that he co-wrote as well as starred in, and it's very much this genre blender that it's a little bit procedural, little bit romance, little bit screwball comedy, all at the same time, where it's accessible while not feeling like it fits into any one box all that well. And that's what made it so refreshing. It wasn't just this distant art house film, but it still felt unlike anything that I had seen before, and it entertained me on multiple different levels while giving him kind of one of these performances that he's able to do a whole bunch of different stuff and explore ideas about identity while also being like just this fun, sexy film at the same time. But then we also got Twisters from him. This is the movie that my wife went to go see 4 different times in the theater, and that is not something that she normally does, and took the neighbor and all the kids to go see it in 4DX because that was her kind of summer blockbuster. So Glenn Powell had multiple different movies that entertained on multiple different levels this year, so I thought he was the breakout star, so he gets his own spot on the list at number 6. Number 5, Wicked. I had no real excitement for this film. I've never seen Wicked, I've never read the book, and my only excitement for the film was because my wife and daughter were very excited to check it out, and anything that gets them excited about movies, I am excited for. So I went into it, no real expectations. And almost immediately, I felt like this movie just pulled me into the world of Oz. And it was just such an immersive experience that not since like the Harry Potter films has there been a film that so built out this fantasy world that just sucks you into it, where everything's so different and you just want to explore everything. The sets are huge and they're shot with wide angle lenses so you can see everything. There's all these interesting little details. Even in the dance numbers, you'll have 50 people on screen doing intricate choreography while someone is singing, and there's long takes where you can see everything, but also in the background there's like spinning shelves and all sorts of things that just makes everything come to life and feel so big and massive. But beyond that, it had a lot more character work than I was expecting. There's a lot more thematic exploration about racism, fascism, and misinformation. Like all of this stuff that's in there that just elevates it beyond great production design and catchy songs in the world of Oz. It's just a holistically good film that has so much to offer. So as someone that went in like, okay, gonna watch the Oz movie, I was wowed by it. Number 4, Inside Out 2. I was a huge fan of the original Inside Out because it was a film that managed to be both entertaining as well as insightful. And I felt it was actually set up really nicely for a sequel because you can continue to explore what goes on inside of Riley, inside of all of us as we mature, as we grow up and touch on emotions with this storytelling mechanism in new and fresh ways. And I feel like that's exactly what this movie did so well, where you have Riley going through puberty, transitioning into high school. So in the main real world of the story, she's given more of a plot, she's more of a character, and it almost plays out kind of like Mean Girls if you were able to see what's going on inside of our lead character's head and what is pulling her in all these strange directions. And what was so good about it is it found a way to treat anxiety both as the antagonist, but also let us know the purpose of anxiety, that it's not just the villain. It's trying to help. It's trying to make things better, but anxiety out of control leads to chaos. And that's so insightful. It's so useful. So once again, this is a movie that I didn't just enjoy it superficially, which I did. I found it to be a useful film. It was a movie I was glad I was able to watch with my 10-year-old daughter and then talk about all of it afterwards. And it's the sort of film that I think I'll re-explore with her as she moves into middle school, into high school. And it's a great conversation piece because I think it captures and unpacks our emotions so well while being entertaining. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what were those movies that made you love movies this year? Also, remember, I've got a bunch of other end of the year lists. I did worst, disappointing, surprises, comic book movies ranked, and then I do my annual ranking on January 1st, where I go through all 140 plus movies that I saw, and I will be ranking them live on this channel. Details will be down below in the description for that. In third, Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. Now, I was born in 1981, and that means for the first 8 years of my life, the only cinematic superhero I had was Christopher Reeve as Superman, and then I got a second one, Michael Keaton as Batman. That was it. And so the one that was so foundational for me when I was growing up, in those childhood memories of falling in love with these movies that have kind of shaped my life and now my career trajectory, the foundational actor was Christopher Reeve. And then, just a few years after that, he had his accident. And for the first time in my life, one of my childhood heroes turned out to be vulnerable. And if you aren't kind of my age, it's difficult to understand what that meant for us, that Superman was paralyzed. And it was the first time we really saw something like that for my specific generation. And that is what this movie was able to tap into, of telling the story of the actor who would become Superman, that is the foundational film for the dominant genre of the last 20 years. And then likewise, the story of his fall and recovery in his accident. And it's able to touch on so much humanity. It covers the full spectrum of human emotions, of victory, failure, of arrogance, of utterly giving up, and then the triumph of the human spirit in realizing the influence that one person can have in so many different ways. This was the movie that just drew out so many big emotions, that just captured the human experience while telling the story of someone that lived this larger than life and then had such a tragic accident and then still decided to push through and triumph afterwards. Just an incredible story that moved me on an incredible level. Our runner-up, Dune Part 2. Now, when the original Dune came out and ended on a cliffhanger, I rated it at 1 score and said, as soon as they greenlight a sequel, I'll bump it up 1 notch. And if the sequel's able to fulfill all the promise of the setup in this movie, let's bump it up 1 more notch. Well, that sequel was greenlit, and I thought the sequel was even better than the first film. Some of that is because I just love payoff, and Part 1 is all set up and Part 2 is all payoff. But I just think it's just such a great subversive version of the hero's journey in the good sense. When you subvert expectations just by delivering something different, but not something better or smarter, you leave disappointed. But when a movie or a story is able to subvert your expectations and deliver something more insightful than you wanted, deliver something with more layers than you expected, then it's a pleasant surprise and subversion done right. And that's what Dune is. It fully taps into the hero's journey and delivers on all of those levels with Paul's ascension and victory and triumph, while also having this flip side to it of what's really going on, the manipulations that took place to lead to that moment. So every victory that he has, every time he ascends in his leadership and wins a battle, You have two different emotions that you feel. I love that about the film, that it's able to pull so much out of you with every single event that takes place. Beyond that, right along with Wicked, and in a totally different sense, another incredibly immersive film where every single frame is believable. Every single visual effect just disappears and you feel like you're looking at a reality. You know it's not real. You know Arrakis isn't a real place, but they pulled off the visual effects, the production design, everything is immaculate. So you just buy into this reality. As someone that loves sci-fi, epics, all of this stuff, this was right up my alley and a gigantic triumph. But coming in at number 1, The Wild Robot. And right along with Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, this is the movie that made me feel the most in 2024. And to me, that's the most important metric when deciding what is the best film of the year. We're not just looking at technical aspects and ambition, but what is the movie that actually connected with me on a human level the most? And for me, it was The Wild Robot. While it is this story about a robot in the wilderness, raising a bird, and all the hijinks that come with that, at its core, it's a story about parenting. Because it's about a robot and cute animals and it's funny, children will be entertained by the film. But this is the movie, the last 3 or 4 months, that parents, my neighbors, we talk about, oh, have you gone to go see The Wild Robot yet? How much did you cry? Oh, you're going to go see it? Bring a box of Kleenex. That's the actual conversation I keep having with other parents that I know in real life, because it's a movie that just taps into something so real, so human in this fantastical environment. What impressed me about a lot of it is how much story it's able to cover and still feel like it's diving into everything properly. I mean, it covers the entire raising of this bird into adulthood and those adventures, and gives us the big finale, all in this one movie that's not very long, while being fully satisfying because it's such efficient storytelling. Every sequence matters. Even every joke matters, setting something up later on in the movie that matters in the plot, because it's scripted to perfection. So for me, this is the movie that made me feel the most. I smiled, I cried, I watched it and went, man, I gotta get my wife to watch this one and see how she reacts to it. So for me, it comes in at number 1. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, check out that playlist right over there with my other end of the year list, as well as that live stream where I rank all of the new releases that I saw in 2024. Check out Patreon at the link down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching in 2024, and keep talking movies too much in 2025.